Have a change of tools if you want to try something different. Go and swap, make a friend, have a swap, see what you find. So good afternoon, my name's Darren and I've been a topiary artist working in the UK and the USA, and we're just going to have a little bit look at technique and how best to clip. The worst part of doing any topiary is doing the cleaning up, and so we've ended up putting down, because we're working here on gravel, we put some sheets down and that will catch all of the arisings, all of the clippings, and it's just going to make your life so much easier. Once you've done the nice part of doing the pruning, you can then just roll up the sheets and take it straight to your compost heap or wherever you're recycling the arisings. So it makes your life much easier. So first thing to do is to, instead of holding the shears away down at the end of the handles, is to get a little bit more control, you hold them closer to the blades. And then as you're clipping, you're just moving one hand. If you move one hand at a time, it's not just more economical, less tiring. You can switch hands if you need to, but you've then got more control over the shape you're making. And then finally, because technique for topiary is really simple, if you're holding things closer to the blades and you're just moving one hand, then you're looking down the plane that you're cutting. And then you're thinking like a machine. You're going with very smooth action and not hunting and pecking, but just running across the hedge trying to clip. So something like this. So you can see I've got lots of control. I'm just moving one hand at a time, and then it's just very simple. You're not worrying if you miss anything. And then brush away the debris. You can see what you've missed. So when you're done clipping, you can see some of the arisings are in the top, and occasionally they will fall down. If you don't clean off through the top, sometimes they can drop down into the middle of the topiary. Well, that can kind of end up leading to problems with blight, because it creates conditions that are stagnant, that doesn't allow air through the plant. Warm and damp are the perfect conditions for blight. So if you have blight, it can exacerbate the problem and make it worse. So if you can get as much debris out as possible, again, it's a little bit more work, but it means your hedge is healthier in the long run. As you're clipping, to make sure that you get the right angle, what you're looking to do is you can just step back and have a little look. Have a look from a different position, because what you want to do is you don't want to end up with something wonky, and certainly this hedge, there's parts that haven't grown as well. So you're after your own internal plumb line, where you can stand back and see that the hedge itself looks straight and looks right. But sometimes that means you cut less. You don't follow the line down, you just cut straight across. And you're just very smooth in your action. There's not a difference in technique between doing the top and the sides, but what you're doing along the sides is just very calmly, like a machine going across it. You may wish to look down from the top, because again, you're looking down that plane. Then when you come to the inside, because we've got the flowers here, we want to give them as much space as possible. So we're going to hit the hedge a little bit harder, bring it back a little bit further. So again, you stand above, so you're looking down the plane that you're going to be cutting. And it's exactly the same technique. You're not hunting and pecking. You're just very smooth, going down the angle that you're looking at to try and create that lovely smooth hedge, that lovely facade of the hedge. I'm holding the tool slightly differently. First of all, I've turned it over, because that just gives me a better angle to go down the hedge. And I am holding a little bit further down the handles, because it's quite tight to go and stand inside there. But what I'm not doing is holding right at the end of the handles and ending up with this kind of lack of control and bouncing around. You've still got enough control here as you're clipping. It doesn't matter whether you're holding it this way round or this way round, whatever works for the shape that you're trying to make. So perhaps if you're making a box ball, you might go this way because then you're able to follow that curve, which you'll get. You can see it's slightly angled, so you might be able to make the box ball a little bit easier. Sometimes if you want a straight line, you might want to use it this way because it's a little bit straighter going through. I don't tend to think about it. It tends to just be quite natural, but I've been doing it a long time. So it's kind of working off of your instinct of what feels right for that particular shape you're making. So for example, when I was cutting the top, holding them this way seemed the right way because I can kind of rest the blade again along the top of the hedge, and it helps guide me along. When I've cut the inside, holding them this way felt easier because the angle just seems right. It seems easier to get the angle I need to make the hedge look the way I want it to look. Here, the line is already achieved. We know how wide we want this box hedge to be because it's part of a historical garden, so we know the size. But it's really up to you what you decide, how far you decide to cut back. You might decide to just take off all of the new growth, the season's growth already, which will be a lighter green. So things like this. You can see that's this year's growth already. It's this nice light green. If you do that, you're going to be able to keep your hedge. If you just take that off every year, you'll keep your hedge the same size and keep it quite young. You might decide to go a little bit harder to make it a little bit tighter, or you might decide to leave it a little bit looser. It comes down to your choice and what you like. I think for boxwood, it's better to do it in the autumn, late summer, early autumn. So you allow it to have a whole season's growth. It has its first flush of growth to the end of June, and then it has the rest of the summer to add on a little bit more growth. It tends to look really shaggy and unkempt, but I really like that kind of luxurious, abundant feeling. And then when you cut it, you get that contraction at the end of summer, early autumn, and it becomes very tightly clipped. And that feeling, it's like having a really nice haircut. You think, I feel fresh and ready to go again. It's a really nice moment. So I like to do it then. You cut it when it suits your kind of mindset. It comes down to you making a choice. And I quite like scruffy through the summer into something tightly clipped and staying tightly clipped through the winter. If you have the chance to cut on a kind of cool, dry day, I think that tends to work best. If it's 30 degrees or very warm, very bright, you can cut and it can brown off these new, because you're exposing this, the hedge, these new cuts are exposed to the sun and it can start to brown off. But if you need to get it done and that's the only time you have to do it, then obviously, you know, life gets in the way of the perfect conditions. So go ahead and cut it, but then you might want, if it's really bright, you might want just to put some sheets across the top to keep the sun, to just shade it from the sun until the evening, and then pull them off and allow it to breathe again. So there's ways around it. There's always ways around it. But obviously in a perfect life, you would have all day to do your cutting and it would be a lovely dry, not too warm, overcast day.